Live from the Arcadian Court, it's Graham Kerr's Gathering Place. Now, here he is, the most successful gourmet in the world, international food expert, Graham Kerr.
Lovely to have you with it. Wonderful. Hey, good to have you here. It's really special to have you come. Nice to see you. Oh, I love that smile. Hey, buddy. All right. I am so thrilled that you're here today. And the reason I'm so thrilled is because of my guest and what we're going to be talking about. Let me introduce you first of all. This is Dr. Kurt Ellison. Now, he's an epidemiologist and a cardiologist, and he's the chief of preventative, it has to keep on stuttering, really, medicine at Boston University. Now, subject matter. Some time ago, I spoke to you about this at the end of the program. And you know, sometimes you get somebody saying butter, and then somebody says, no, don't eat butter anymore, eat margarine. And then somebody says, no, it's not margarine anymore, it's olive oil. And we, the consumer, has a tendency to say, oh, forget it. You know, I'm going back to do just what I want to do myself. And that's a shame, because you see, what's going on is there should never be conflict. Conflict, punch the consumer on either side of the head. I'm for this, I'm against that. Whoa, it goes. Then you get compromise, in which you do, well, I'll have a little of this and I have a little of that. And people say, where's he coming from? I thought he believed in this, and now he doesn't seem to. And the third thing is synergize. That's an interesting one, because you see, you can firmly believe something, and another person firmly believes something, but you soften your absolutes a little bit, what you think are your absolutes. Soften them just a touch. And you begin to offer somebody the opportunity to choose. There is a freedom to choose. We're going to talk about wine today. You know me of old, and that is that I have moved within an area of de-alcoholizing wine. And I've done that absolutely for years. Now today we're going to talk about wine in the context of it being good for your health. And this is really what Kurt does in life, is to find every means by which to get better heart health for the individual. So, great. Now, I will cook a moussaka, and this is from Greece. It's a marvelous dish. It has the eggplant, and I went to inordinate trouble to match my eggplant today with my shirt. And it is a lovely dish, simply done. I'm going to do it all in a skillet. Very simple way of actually achieving it. A little lamb there, a little red wine in it. You'll see. Okay, let's have a go and see where we're going to today. As you know, we're on a search for comfort food, where people care about each other and care enough to wrap it up in pleasure. And one of those great places for doing this is the Greek islands. And that's where we're going to today. Now, we're on the Windstar, which is a 4-masted sailing vessel, where they turn the engine off at night time, and you cruise through the Aegean Sea with just a whisper. And I'm a sailor, and I was fascinated by this. It's really a cruise ship sails. Look at this. Now, this is their means by which they keep it on a level keel. They pump water from one side of the boat to the other in order to keep it on a level keel. Now, we're sailing through the Greek islands here, and we're going to go, first of all, this is my cabin. I thought you'd like to see the cabin. That's where you sort of sit and read and do that sort of thing. Right here now is Santorini at the bottom, and we're going up to Mykonos after that, and then we're going to hike into Athens. Now, when you first see Santorini, you could think that it'd been snowing. The top of the hillside is white with houses. And they're just unrelieved, just whiteness, perfect. Now, I thought, wow, look at that cable car. I was a little diffident about taking it, so I thought I'd film it from the boat first of all and then see whether I had the courage to do it. You can, by the way, walk up if you want to. And I decided to go up, and I went up. Unfortunately, my batteries ran out, so I thought you'd like to see how to carve a watermelon instead. When they were carving this watermelon, I said, look, it's a heart shape they cut, first of all, and then they cut a slice underneath the heart shape. See how they do that, please, and get a watermelon sometime and try it. It is the most, I mean, look how elegant that was. It was fantastic. You know, in cruise ships, most of the time, you play casinos and you have stage shows, but here you carve watermelons, isn't it? Now, we had that night a most ideal experience. We sat around having a barbecue, served white tablecloths under Santorini in the top like this, so the sun was going down, and at least 300,000 calories in beef was being served, uncharacteristically. A suckling pig was roaming. And, you know, you got saying, well, where is the Greek food? And all of a sudden, I was sort of hunting around this buffet looking for something that was Greek and found the Greek salad. But of course, in finding it, I found about 1.5 pounds of feta cheese on the outside, but apparently, well, we talk about that in the next episode. You make great friends on these kind of trips. A lot of people are sailors rather than more than the sort of typical cruising type. And so we just, not that there's anything wrong with the typical cruising type, I want you to know. We've done that, been there. Okay, now, that is the essence of the Mediterranean. And the essence of the Mediterranean, of course, is that they drink good red wine. And they actually lob together with something called the French paradox. And would you tell us, first of all, what the French paradox is about?
A few years ago, we realized that the French have very low rates of heart disease, and we really didn't know why. Right. So a group of us thought we would look into it, and it turns out that probably their regular moderate consumption of red wine is one of the key factors that is protecting the French.
Okay.
There have been a lot of criticism. People say, well, you know, they do other things, they're genetically superior, all these things that they claim. But it turns out that genetically they're very similar to us. It seems that their diet is as bad or worse than ours. They smoke more than we do.
Right.
That cholesterol is high. Everything is wrong except they don't get heart disease. They have about 1/3 the number of heart attacks as people in the U.S., and about 1/4 is people in the UK. So it's the rest of the Western world gets heart disease, but somehow the French seem to be protected.
Okay, and so how long ago was that first started to, I know about 60 Minutes, but before 60 Minutes?
Well, epidemiologist, I'm an epidemiologist. We work in studying the epidemics that affect people. The first thing we dealt with were, you know, cholera and malaria and so forth, but now we're dealing with the chronic diseases. And we're finding out that heart disease, which is the leading cause of death, can indeed be prevented. So we're trying to find out all of the factors that may prevent it.
Yeah.
And we've known for a long time that a little bit of alcohol seems to protect against heart disease, but we did not want to broadcast this widely because we were afraid that people would, you know, go gung-ho and start drinking too much and start abusing alcohol.
Can I say this to you? If I put that glass there and I was to pour what is classically the glass of wine, 5 ounces?
4 ounces, that's fine.
All right,
that's good.
Fine, okay. So between 4 and 5 ounces, then you get 5 from a bottle?
5 or 6 glasses from a bottle.
All right. Now, I've got in my glass the same quantity.
Okay.
Now, this is a wine made with alcohol, but the alcohol's been removed.
Yes.
So we've now got 2 glasses there, both from red grapes.
Yes.
And there's a part of this which is similar,
correct,
and one part which isn't.
Right.
We'll come back in just a couple of minutes' time, and you explain to me what the difference is.
All right.
so much. We don't want to get these mixed up, do we now? Okay, so side by side, both red grape. Tell us, first of all, the similarity between these two.
Both of these are loaded with a lot of phenolic compounds, a lot of antioxidants and other protective things that work similar to vitamins to protect.
Resveratrol and things like that.
Resveratrol is one that's gotten the most publicity, and that seems to be a wonderful gift to get rid of a lot of the atherosclerosis that we develop, to get rid of, maybe even prevent cancer. Okay. And both of these have those substances.
All right.
Red grape juice in large amounts has the same amount too.
Yes, okay. Does it? I was just wondering whether when you made a wine with alcohol, as this one is, fermented, whether those were accentuated sometime during that process.
Definitely. By fermentation, you get a lot of these products become active. In the red grape juice, you'd have to drink about 2 bottles to get the same amount as that small glass.
That's an awful lot of grape juice.
That's a lot of grape juice.
Okay, so, all right. Now, so we move that aside. Now you have something here that is not in here, which is alcohol.
Alcohol.
Okay, about 11, 12 grams?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. And these weigh out at, 7 calories per gram, roughly?
The calories are there, but for some reason, a small amount of wine does not add to obesity.
Oh, no.
We don't count those calories. We don't count those as much.
Okay, so alcohol's here. Now, what does alcohol do specifically?
Alcohol does 2 things. It makes the substances in your wine, dealcoholized wine, become more active.
Okay.
We have several studies that show that if you take vitamins, take folate and other things, they worked. If you drink a little alcohol, they work 2 or 3 times greater in terms of preventing heart disease. So the alcohol is enhancing the other substances. But the bottom line is the alcohol itself is imported. That means that if you're getting a little alcohol from beer or spirits or wine, white wine or red wine, you're going to get some additional protection that you don't get from the dealcoholized.
Okay, and that runs up. There's a kind of a thing called the U-shaped curve, I understand.
Yes.
And so that as you go into that, we are really talking moderation.
Well,
2 glasses?
if someone says, is alcohol good for you? It depends how much you drink.
Yeah.
If you drink a little bit, it's good for you. If you drink a lot, it's bad for you. We know that. And physicians have been dealing with abuse for so long that it's very difficult for some of us to say, geez, can I really say that a little alcohol is good for you? Because we know of all of the problems with drunk driving and alcohol abuse. And that indeed is a huge health problem throughout the world. Yeah. But as long as it is in moderation, small amounts, and for someone my size, this is all I need. I only need one glass a day to get almost all of the benefits.
And you probably drink this with food.
Absolutely. If I drink this on an empty stomach, my blood alcohol level will go up a little bit. Yeah. If I'm doing it with a meal, it goes up half as much.
Okay. Now, what about a guy or a gal who is in denial? And, we know denial is not just a long river in Egypt, but is in fact this incredible thing of saying, no, I can handle it, no problem. Tell me the quantity over which it begins to go negative.
Well, it varies from individual to individual. Women tend to be smaller, and they also have less of an enzyme that digests the alcohol. So the problem is that if a certain amount of alcohol is acceptable to a person, to a male, it may not be as acceptable to a female. So women in general should drink a little bit less. Okay. But I can tell you how much you should drink. And if you've had problems with alcohol abuse, or if it's against your religion or against your ethics, none. Anybody who has had problems with alcohol abuse in the past and is now on the wagon should stay away from it. Right. They should not start drinking for the health. That's the worst thing to do. But for the majority of people who drink occasionally or regularly, they should know that a small amount, a drink a day now, you can't save it up for the weekend. I can have this much today.
It's not a bucket and a long straw.
Unfortunately, you have to have a small amount on a regular basis, because a lot of the effects of this only last for a day or 2.
The anti-clotting.
Absolutely. Yes, in addition to raising the HDL, the good cholesterol, which tends to prevent atherosclerosis, the other substances in here tend to reduce your risk of forming a clot within the arteries.
Right.
So, you know, I grew up in the United States, so I'm sure I have a certain amount of atherosclerosis from all of the fat and cholesterol I've eaten.
Before
when
you
I don't-
became a good boy.
That's right.
Right.
Before I began to realize that a little bit of it's the clotting that forms the heart attack or the stroke.
Right.
And the transient effects of this substance tend to protect against that.
Good. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll take my glass of wine. You sit there and nurse that one, and I'll cook for you.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a minute. Okay. Right. Oh, come on. Come. All right. Now, this dish is going to employ some wine, and we're going to look at it from a culinary point of view as well, because my theory about wine and food should be that you should never, ever add anything to a dish that you're not prepared to drink. And I think that, you know, having said this, that I do and will talk about the wine that I use in just a moment or two, because I can actually drink it at the same time. So, first of all, let's do this. We're going to talk, you can stay, you know, for
Absolutely.
tomorrow? Oh, good, wonderful. Then we're going to talk a lot about olive oil tomorrow, but in the meantime, I always keep olive oil in this. It just keeps it from oxidizing in any way, and it also allows me to measure it. And if I'm going to go for the amounts of fat I'm going to get, I like to measure things. If people say to me, eat in moderation, then I want to know how to measure moderation. I think to say you can eat anything if you eat in moderation, it allows you to drive a tank through the system. But if you've got a means to measure it simply and easily, I think it's a good idea. So, I want something as a basis for all the dishes that I do, everything that I do. I want to start with the natural volatile oils that come out of vegetables. And it's a terrific thing to be able to have good vegetables added to foods all the time, and as many as possible, to be able to displace the meat. If anything needs to move out of the way in the middle of the plate, it's meat. It needs to, I know that we love it. I know it's a symbol of the way that we live, and that we're a successful organization and nation if we could sit down to, you know, just like the steak that you saw on the barbecue. The truth of the matter is, the smart ones are moving to a shaving of meat rather than, you know, a huge amount. I'll show you how to do that with this bit. All right, down into the pan, just finely sliced or diced, doesn't really matter, it all winds up in this dish, of the onions, and that's a good medium-sized onion, first of all. Now, the way that I've come to really enjoy crushing garlic, it's good, you know, those days when you would actually buy one of those dolls and go hit it, you know, like Japanese automobile manufacturers or something, they go and bang. Isn't that true? That you do? They've got a special room and you've got all this, and you've got the managing director, and you go whack him with a baseball bat. Not him personally, but you know, the doll, and it goes down and comes back up and bam, again. Well, another way of doing that without being quite so offensive would be just to smash garlic. And it works out much better in your life too. Okay, so 3 cloves of garlic. I'm not sure whether it's good for you, but it's marvelous, isn't it? So we'll just get a little of the garlic and onions just sauteing across in the top there now. All right, now here's the meat. This is for 6 people. And you'd have to say, Graham, you're kidding. But this is 12 ounces of lamb. And I think this is really quite a lot. I think you can actually get by with about 6 ounces, about 1 ounce per head. But right now, take this. This is very lean leg of lamb. Right? And if you've got a food processor or one of those things that you clamp onto the side of the bench, then just pulse it. This is just a godsend. This really is. This you pulse about 12 times, and it's the same as freshly minced beef. And you know, there's a lot been done recently about the way that minced meat obtained, you know, from a store, and I'm going to be careful as I say this, that there have been some problems with that. You really don't know. But when you've got raw meat yourself and you can see what you're doing, you know what you're actually getting to. I think that works, especially with regard to the amount of fat that there is in it. And whilst the olive oil may not be so much of a problem in terms of fat, the fat in this is a problem. This is the saturated fat, the one that we don't want around. So what I do with this is just flatten it out on a plate. And this I would use with hamburger meat or whatever I was doing, and flatten it out as much as possible, and then take the onions and the garlic from the pan. Let me just shoot those out. They're a little bit recalcitrant pieces there. I don't want to scorch the garlic, so I'm getting every little scrap of that out. And then really wind the heat up high under this. Just another little, you'll be pleased to see this, not a little bit more olive oil. I don't use my olive oil with a bottle, you know. There is a flourish with which you use olive oil. And it's like this. But then if you do a flourish and then you measure what a flourish is, sometimes that can be 1/4 of a cup, you know, and this is a lot of oil. So that's now smoking hot in the bottom of the pan. And we'll then take this. This is the reason why I did it in this fashion. By putting it down flat, I can now place it onto the bottom of this pan. And the pan is about a 10.5 inch, so it gives you enough space to be able to do this. You see, this meat is about 70% moisture content, or water if you like, or moisture, juices. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to throw in great clumps of this and then have it weep in the bottom of the pan. You know, when you do this, water percolates, or the blood juices percolate to the top. When that happens, it doesn't really saute. What it really does do, it boils. It kind of simmers. And it's grey and unpalatable. And what I want to do, there was a French, I don't know what he was, Maillard, did you ever study any of that? He was a chemist, I think. And so he found out that when you took protein and you slowly slowly cooked it, it went brown when you applied it to heat. And he called it the Maillard reaction. And not Mallard as in duck, but Maillard. And so this is what's happening now. When it's on the barbecue, just like the film earlier on, and you smell this gorgeous smell that comes off the meat, this is what's happening now in that pan as it browns. I'm not going to turn it over. I'm just going to let it brown on that one side. Okie doke. Now, eggplant. This is the... you know, I want you to appreciate the fact that we do go to this limit. I even thought to myself, if I wear a grey pair of pants as well, it kind of will sort of, you know, but anyway, doesn't matter. This is cut into meaty, now what on earth is meaty sized chunks? I don't know, but let's say 1/4 of an inch slices through the eggplant. If you try get not a huge eggplant, it doesn't come better because it's enormous. It actually is better when it's smaller. So we'll place this, first of all, get a little, look at this, olive oil, and little spray on there, and we'll put the eggplant on the broiler. It reminds me of Vegas, this is. All right, good. And then on top of this, a little cheese. Now, please, if we're going to talk about cheese just for a moment, I don't want to put too much of this cheese on anything else but the eggplant, but 1/4 cup of cheese. This is good Parmesan cheese. I suppose I could have used the Greek alternative to that, but it's harder to find, and the Parmesan is sort of generally available. Please, please, please get the Parmesan in a block. And if you have it, just, you know, the little grater like this one. But don't add cheese in this manner, but add cheese in this manner to a plate and then measure it. Then you know what you've got, because this can go on like the olive oil. We enjoy these things. And when you're cooking and you're in the rhythm of the thing, it's easy to keep going, you know, and you just feel wonderful about the whole culinary process, and you've just blown it. All right, a little bit of salt on there. And I know you're going to say, oh, really, you've got a fetish. But I want to add, and I'm going to add it in a different way, because I've got enough salt in the cheese to be able to do that. All right, now, this goes into a broiler, and the broiler's nice and hot, and pop it underneath there. And it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to be able to sort of brown and melt the cheese at the same time. This is going well, so hey, got a couple of minutes with nothing to do. Okay, great. Thank you. This is browning nicely here. I'm just going to get just fine. Now, what's happening here, as I was saying, is that if I turn this over, you see it's pink on the top. Now I've got that wonderful meat juices combination. I've made the most out of the meat. when you're going to add meat, then make the most out of it. It's like if you used to live in a mural and you could do whatever you like, and then suddenly, because circumstances surrounded you and you need to make some changes, and you moved into a picture and you have a frame. Now what you do is you bring in the things that you love into the frame and you make the most of them. Everything that you can get out of it, you make. Now, with this, therefore, we've got to see what to do next with this. What I do is to take a meat masher, or a potato masher rather, and I use it as a meat masher. If I've got any clumped pieces there now, I've just dissolved, those, make the most out of it. Sorry. And this is then you return the onions to the pan. Oh, no, before I do that, I want to add the tomato paste. Now, tomato paste is a couple of tablespoons full of this concentrated tomato that you've heard of. And there is ample evidence, it seems nowadays, from a prostate cancer point of view, as far as man is concerned, with the tomato. Absolutely. And when it's cooked in a little oil, and it multiplies it as well. So rather like the alcohol does with the vitamins. So this, good. So now this is cooked down in the bottom of the pan. And when you are reducing the amount of meat, okay, and you put a little tomato paste into that, and start cooking that down, and take a little bit of time, please. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes. But when the tomato ceases to be a red color and has gone a nice deep mahogany, now it's beginning to flower in terms of flavors and depth, which is really remarkable in that particular thing. All right, we'll put a little bit of salt in, and here's my other thing. Just 1/4 teaspoonful of salt. This is sea salt whizzed up in a blender so as to go into this. So you get good salt, and you can actually measure the amount. I've got a little pepper in there as well, which is done in the same fashion. Good. Marvelous. That's all right. Now, into this goes the red wine. Now, normally, you should never be seen dead pouring red wine into a dish, out of a measuring cup like this. But it should be straight out of the bottle and, kind of thing. But there you are, 2 cups. 2 cups of red wine. Now, this is wine without alcohol. We were talking about it earlier. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a 1997 vintage. It's actually maturing in the bottle. Soft and velvety, but it doesn't have the alcohol in it. It has everything else but no alcohol. It's actually gone through the fermentation process and everything else, and it's just the same as a wine would be. And that's done. Okay. Now, what we do is we simmer that with the onions and the garlic back into the pan now. See, I took them out of the pan because if I tried to actually get the browning process taken with the onions there, I would have burned the onions, okay? And I wanted the flavor of the onions and the garlic there first. Now, because I've got so little meat in here, I'm now moving to the Mediterranean diet concept of bringing Bulgar wheat in there. You see, this is Bulgar wheat, and it's one of the more complex carbohydrates that can be added to food, and which forms the sort of the base of the pyramid that you might have seen, or in Canada, the outside portion of the rainbow, which shows us. And by the way, also, it's interesting that in Israel, it's a chalice. In England, it's a plate, which is cut up. Everybody's got their own way of doing this. But with this one, I've got 1/4 cup of Bulgar wheat. Rain that into the top. And that doesn't take long to cook at all. And what happens is texturally, it winds up a little bit like the lamb, and it's absorbing the flavors in this dish as well. So you wouldn't actually know that it wasn't the lamb. It gives you more of a meaty quality of sauce at the same time. Okay. Now, over here, I've got a pan on the heat, and I've got 1 cup of milk. And this is 2% milk. And in the 2% milk, we've got a little bit of, it sticks so badly. Have you ever made a slurry, mixed cornstarch and water together? And it could almost be cement. And that's the reason I got this little thing in Japan once, and it really works like a charm. I've got 2 tablespoons full here of cornstarch and 4 tablespoons full of water. And just put that into the top, return it to the heat. I want to try and get that boiling up. Here we go. just make sure that you don't make a terrible goop out of this one. So it's enough just to stir that around in hot water, and cornstarch cooks so quickly. It's only 30 seconds that it takes to do. So, and we'll just pull that to the side and come back to this one. That's the white sauce that we're doing here. Now, in this one, we've got a couple of herbs which go to rest on this. One is a teaspoonful of oregano, which grows all up. You know what oregano is, where it comes from? Oros ganos, okay, which means the oil of the mountains. Oh, look at that, perfect. Let me just try and scrub these things out. Now you see those are nicely browned. There, that's just the stage at which we want them. Now, oros ganos, a little oregano, just 1 teaspoonful into the top, really speaks of it. And now the really amazing part of this, an 1/8 teaspoonful of cinnamon. Isn't that for buns? No, you guys, it's an amazing thing, this is. But there is that little flavor of cinnamon which crops up in Middle Eastern, and particularly as it reaches the eastern side of the Mediterranean. And you get this wonderful spiciness which crops up too. It's just wonderful. So that's doing well too. So we've got that done. Now, we seem to be at the assembly stage just after the sauce is made. The sauce is thick, and we pour into that either an egg or a half an egg. Imagine you could get one of those little eggs. And I was always very happy for chickens that laid little eggs. It's you know, like this. Oh, look what I did. And we've got this mania for jumbo. And I get terribly worried for the jumbo egg-laying chicken. I understand, actually, that it works not like that. But the little tiny chicken who's laying its first egg lays a little one. And the one which has gone on forever like this, you know, lays the big ones at the end. I don't know, I'm kind of used to laying eggs every day, so it's not. So we'll just stir that around. Don't go back on the heat again too much here, because what will happen is you'll curdle it. All right, we're going. Just a little nutmeg is scattered into the top of that, just enough just to determine that it's there. And a little cheese is going on to the top. Now we'll assemble it. What do I do? Oh, here we go. Let's take this, first of all, this is the mix that has been made, and we'll pour that onto the plate at the moment. And now we've got this empty dish ready to go. And all you do is you take the eggplant and you layer this down into the bottom. Now, I'm not going to turn this out. Some people turn out their moussaka, and that's fine. Then you can make it in strips, and you can spend all day fiddling with it. But just, you put a layer of the cheese-dusted moussaka on the bottom there, and then you take a little of this plate full of stuff that we've got over here, ooh-wee, and just shoot that in on top. Whoa. It's kind of messy, but don't worry. And then the rest of the eggplant becomes a layer, and you can keep on building it if you like. I just use this amount of eggplant, and I think it's fine. You can double it up if you really like eggplant. My wife Trina does not like eggplant. In fact, she'll run from the house when she sees an eggplant. It's the only way that I can get her to leave home. And then, good. And then just shovel that onto the top as well. And you're off and running. Press it down all over. And now in Greece, what can happen, and I'll show you the numbers in a moment to show you what happens when this does happen, you get this most enormous quantity of this white, this custard, this white custard, on the top. It's really a white sauce. It's like a bechamel sauce. And it's poured all over the surface. And it's got this marvelous capping. It's rather like Santorini, with that white capping on the top. So this is it. Pour a little bit of cheese onto the top surface, and then take that and pop it into the oven. It's... Oh, that's right. Sorry. Now, it takes 20 minutes in the oven and then 5 minutes at the broil. That's all it takes to be able to get it ready. And that drops down into the bottom oven, and you've got it. You've got to have a small trap door. Ask for the oven with a trap door in it. It's a wonderful thing. We then can cut this into 6 pieces, if you will. And about this point in time, you say to yourself, this doesn't look very good. And it doesn't, you know. In fact, it's one of the worst looking foods that you can get. But there are nations of this world who have a marvelous ability to enjoy foods, like in India. In India, the food is wonderful. Looks awful sometimes. Good. All right, let's try and shovel one of these up. Now, I'll show you how bad it can look. There. Look at that. Sorry, darling, but that's what the recipe said. These are portions, and in everything we try and do, we try and portion this out so that you are familiar with the fact about what a real portion looks like. Nowadays, in the restaurant business, people fight each other over your body, and it's not fair, right? They keep on arguing with this amount of meat, and that we get you the best deal in town. It's the worst deal in town if you've got to put 16 ounces of steak away, you know, as a special price. So a little mushrooms cooked in a little lemon juice there, and then some nice broiled tomatoes just to kiss the side of this. And when you broil a tomato, when the Russian cosmonauts came back from the moon, they used to be rehabilitated with grilled tomatoes. And olive oil, I suppose. And red wine, vodka. And a little bit of parsley then. It's amazing what parsley can do. You know, when all is lost and you think, looks like the backside of the moon. It's over there. Good. Now, we have one quick thing to show you, which is you can do this dish, and it's really remarkable. It looks just as bad as the other one, but it's made only with mushrooms. You use the eggplant, but there is no lamb in that. And mince the mushrooms in there and carry on as you did before. And it is absolutely delicious. And I'll show you what those numbers represent. That's what it looks like when it's done. Okay, fine. All right, now we need someone to help us to eat this. And I've got to make this instantaneous decision about who looks as if they're worthy, and it's you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Milana, all right, Milana, and you've met Kurt. Now, meet Musaka. Milana meets Musaka. You right now?
It's wonderful.
That's all right? Is it good? Good. Wonderful. Okay, with the tomato and the mushrooms, marvelous. Good. Now, alcohol or none?
I'll go for the non today.
Oh, you will today. I should really pour both of it, you know. Okay. It is, after all, at this time of day. Okay, fine. Now, please, the questions that we have. Yes, sir.
Yes, Dr. Ellison and Graham, this is Harry.
Hi. I enjoy having a beer after work. Must I switch to wine?
If you're consuming your beer in moderation, if you're doing it regularly rather than saving it up for the weekend, the beer has the same alcohol. 1 can of beer has the same amount of alcohol as this, so you're getting most of the beneficial effects. So stick with what you enjoy as long as you're doing it in moderation.
Thank you.
And eat plenty of fruit and vegetables and then make up for the difference that you would have got from this.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Okay. Now, anyone else? Keep raising your hands if you would like to ask us. Right here in the front.
What's your name?
My name's Maureen. My father has heart disease and he's on medication, and I was wondering if it would be all right for him to have red wine on moderation.
That's a very good question, because I think anyone who is on medication for anything should talk with his or her doctor before beginning. Many medicines, particularly the blood thinners, Coumadin and things like that, will interact with the alcohol. So if you're taking medication, if you have heart disease or other liver disease, obviously you should not be drinking, but be sure and talk with your doctor first, because the effects are quite profound, but you don't want to add them on top of the medications.
Okay.
So talk with your doctor.
Thank you.
And hope that your doctor is up to date on the latest medical research, which
Right.
is somewhere
And if he isn't, just tell him to get on to www.grahamcare.com and we'll put him in touch with Kurt.
Okay, thank you.
You know, okay.
Thank you.
Good. And now, one of the things that I was fascinated by when you were in all of this research is that vitamin E, which is supposed to be so profoundly good, may in fact be less viable than the alcohol in the wine.
Vitamin E is we have a big question mark.
Okay.
People who normally eat lots of vitamin E also eat very healthy foods. They have tomatoes and they have garlic and other things that are healthy as well. And the people who eat more vitamin E look like they do better. But then when we do a clinical trial where people are either taking vitamin E or a placebo,
Right.
we don't see any effects. So we don't know the bottom line on vitamin E. I usually take a little vitamin E because I think it probably is going to be good for you, but I can't prove that. We just don't know yet.
In the issue of being able to prove or not prove, you're confident now that for those people, and we would discount now pregnant women, and maybe breast cancer in women as well. Maybe. But for those people who cannot drink, then don't drink it. But for those who can and feel it's all right, you're confident this is going to help their heart.
I am confident that the data are so convincing, so consistent around the world, in Japan, in China, in areas that have very low rates of heart disease. People who drink a small amount of alcohol have much lower rates of heart disease. I don't think there's any question. We know all the mechanisms. You know, it affects the good cholesterol. It prevents the clotting, as we talked about. So I'm convinced that, indeed, if you can tolerate a little alcohol, small amounts, regular basis, good for you.
Let's look at the numbers for this dish and compare them to the classic in just a minute. right, let's have a look and see what the numbers would be. In the classic Greek one, which is with the thick custard on the top, it's 540 calories, 40 grams of fat in that one, and 17 of those are saturated fat, which we're going to talk about in our next program. 21 in carbohydrate and 1 in fiber. So let's have a look and see what we got here. 236, so almost half that. 9 grams of fat in total, only 4 in saturated, and when you consider it's meat-based, you know, that's amazing. 17 in carbohydrate and 3 in fiber. If you did the vegetarian one with the mushrooms, it sinks down to 167, 4 and 2. Really quite low. As always, thanks so much for being here. And next time, don't go away because we want you here tomorrow. Thanks so much, darling. Nice to have you with us. All right, a quick little summary about what I think about that one. You have to know about me is I'm a man, Trina and I as a family, have a body, soul, mind, and spirit. You've heard of that one? Well, which of those would you prefer to cross out? I don't want to have any one of those crossed out. So from a spiritual point of view, there's an old piece of writing which says to people like us, do nothing whereby your brother stumbles, is offended, or made weak. Now, you know, if you believe in this way, and that is a choice that one makes individually, then you look at that and you simply can't put that on one side. That's related to the eating of meat and vegetables, by the way, and the offering of food to idols and things like that. But I can also take it for wine with alcohol for that person who can't handle it. And that's the reason why I have made that decision in my life. What about you? Do you know something? This program is all about choice. And I'm so grateful that Kurt came today to give us the other side of my coin so that you have that wonderful choice in your life. See you in a moment. On the next episode of The Gathering Place, we're going to go to Mykonos, just up as I promised, next island up, and Dr. Kurt will be with us once again. We're going to discuss the Mediterranean diet, have a marvelous chicken pie made with phyllo pastry. Oh, don't miss this one. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Gathering Place.